In the heart of a forgotten valley, surrounded by hills cloaked in mist, lay the small village of Elder Glen. Its crumbling homes, built of weathered stone and patched roofs, were a testament to years of neglect and poverty. The villagers, dressed in tattered garments, eked out a living from the stubborn soil, their days marked by struggle and resignation. Among them was Leila, a 17-year-old girl whose bright eyes were a rare contrast to the dreary surroundings. With her raven-black hair tied loosely behind her head, she moved gracefully despite the burden of her daily chores. Leila's life was a symphony of labor, fetching water from the distant well, tending to her sickly mother, and ensuring her younger brother Samuel had enough to eat. The village whispered of her resilience, though many dismissed her dreams as foolish. She spoke of a world beyond the hills, of places where the sky stretched endlessly, unbroken by the weight of poverty. "Hope," she would say, "is the one thing they can't take from us." One grey morning, as frost clung to the window panes, a herald arrived in Elder Glen. His arrival was rare, for the village seldom received visitors from the capital. Dressed in the royal colours of crimson and gold, he rode a sleek black horse that seemed out of place amidst the village's humble livestock. Gathering the townsfolk in the central square, he unfurled a parchment bearing the royal seal. "By decree of His Majesty King Edward," he proclaimed, "each village under the Crown's protection must send one able-bodied servant to the royal palace. This service shall be considered a debt of loyalty to the throne." The villagers exchanged anxious glances. Many feared the unknown fate awaiting anyone chosen. For Leila, it was a chance, perhaps her only one, to escape the clutches of Elder Glen's despair. Yet she hesitated, knowing her family needed her. When the elder of the village called for a volunteer, silence gripped the square. Then, amidst the murmurs and uncertainty, Leila stepped forward. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled. "I will go." Her mother's eyes filled with tears as she reached out to hold her daughter. "Leila, no, we need you here." Leila placed a comforting hand on her mother's. "This is my chance, Mama. I promise I'll find a way to send help." The herald nodded approvingly, unaware of the turmoil brewing in her heart. "You shall leave at dawn. Bring what you need, though the palace shall provide for you." That night, Leila sat by the fire, gazing at the flickering flames. Samuel, barely 10, clung to her arm. "Will you come back?" he asked, his voice small and uncertain. "I will," she assured him, though the words felt hollow. "And when I do, things will be better, for all of us." As dawn broke, the villagers gathered to see her off. She carried a small bundle containing her only possessions, a faded shawl, a leather-bound notebook where she wrote her thoughts, and a simple wooden comb carved by her father before his passing. The herald helped her onto the horse that would take her to the capital. As they rode away, Leila stole one last glance at Elder Glen, her heart heavy with a mix of fear and determination. Little did she know that the journey ahead would test her spirit in ways she could never imagine, and that her courage would soon entwine her fate with that of the king himself. The journey to the capital was a stark contrast to the world Leila had always known. As the horses' hooves clattered against the cobblestone roads, she marveled at the changing landscapes. The dense forests of Elder Glen gave way to rolling meadows, dotted with wildflowers in hues she had never seen before. Rivers sparkled under the midday sun, their clear waters flowing with a serenity that seemed foreign to her. The herald, who introduced himself as Marcus, was a man of few words. His sharp eyes scanned the path ahead, ever vigilant. Leila, sitting unsteadily on the horse behind him, found herself torn between fear and curiosity. "What is the palace like?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. Marcus glanced back at her, his expression unreadable. "Grand," he replied curtly. "But it is no place for idle dreams. Remember your duty, girl." His response sent a chill through her, but she pressed no further. Instead, she turned her attention back to the road, her mind racing with questions. What awaited her within those towering walls? Would she be treated kindly, or would her life become an endless chain of servitude? As the hours passed, they reached the outskirts of the capital. The first glimpse of the city left Leila breathless. Stone walls, taller than anything she had ever seen, surrounded the bustling streets. Inside, merchants called out their wares and children darted between the crowds, their laughter ringing through the air. The scent of freshly baked bread mingled with the tang of spices, a combination that made her stomach rumble. But there was no time to stop. Marcus urged the horse forward, navigating through the maze of streets until the palace gates loomed before them. They were immense, wrought of iron, and adorned with intricate carvings of lions and eagles, symbols of the royal house. 2 guards stood at attention, their polished armor gleaming. They nodded at Marcus and stepped aside, allowing the gates to swing open. Leila's breath caught as they entered the palace grounds. The gardens stretched as far as the eye could see, filled with vibrant flowers, marble fountains, and perfectly trimmed hedges. The palace itself was a marvel of architecture, its spires piercing the sky. Dismounting, Marcus gestured for Leila to follow. "Come, you'll be taken to the steward. He'll assign your duties." Leila hesitated, her legs stiff from the journey, but she quickly obeyed. Inside the palace, the air was cool and heavy with the scent of polished wood and burning candles. Servants scurried about, their footsteps muffled by the plush carpets. The steward, a thin, stern-looking man named Aldrich, regarded her with a critical eye. "You'll start in the kitchens," he declared after a brief introduction. "Fetch water, scrub pots, and stay out of trouble. Do your work well, and you may earn better tasks." Leila nodded, keeping her gaze lowered. As Aldrich dismissed her, a young maid named Clara stepped forward. "I'll show you around," Clara said with a warm smile. "Don't mind Aldrich. He's harsh, but he's fair." Grateful for the kindness, Leila followed Clara through the labyrinthine corridors. Along the way, Clara pointed out various rooms, the grand dining hall, the servants' quarters, and the king's private wing, which was strictly off-limits. "Has anyone ever seen the king?" Leila asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. Clara's smile faded. "Not often. He keeps to himself these days. They say he's not the man he once was." The words lingered in Leila's mind as they reached the kitchens. The clamour of clanging pots and bustling cooks was overwhelming, but Leila threw herself into the work, determined to prove her worth. As the day stretched into night, exhaustion weighed on her, but she found solace in the thought that she was one step closer to a better future. Unbeknownst to her, fate had already begun weaving her into the fabric of the palace, and her path was about to cross with the king's in ways she could never have imagined. The days in the palace began to blur together for Leila. From the break of dawn until the late hours of the night, she scrubbed, carried, and cooked. Her hands, once soft, became calloused, and her body ached from the unrelenting labor. Yet, amidst the exhaustion, there was an undercurrent of curiosity that kept her spirit alive. She noticed things others seemed to overlook. The whispered conversations between the noble advisers, the hurried footsteps echoing through empty halls, and the locked doors that no one dared to approach. There was a tension in the palace, subtle yet pervasive, as if a storm were brewing beneath the surface. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Leila found herself unable to sleep. The servants' quarters were quiet, save for the occasional creak of the wooden beams. The moonlight filtered through the small, frosted window, casting faint,